Hello, it's Bob here, the HIGHERWAY code. Welcome to my live stream question and answer session. Get yourselves a cup of tea and sit and listen to me prattle on about life, the universe and everything else for the next maybe hour. Who knows? Who knows? Depends who comes online. Got some interesting things to talk about today. One of them is a new sword, which I picked up fairly recently. I actually ordered it from Armour Class up in Glasgow. Fantastic blacksmith, swordsmith called Ian. Reasonable price. I'm not going to say how much it was, but it was reasonable. And I ordered it in August. Completely forgot about it, and then suddenly, out of the blue, it turned up. And here it is. Those of you who know me know that I've fairly recently, about a year or so, got into historical English martial arts, well, European martial arts with a passion. And now have a collection of about 11 swords, rapiers, broadswords, basket hilt broadswords, like this beautiful example here. Hi, Rabia. Good to see you on board. I'm just showing off my sword, which arrived last week. I hope you're well. And thanks for joining in. You're the first one on today, Rabia. So I hope the meditation's going well. And I hope you can hear me clearly as well. That we don't have any technical problems at all, as we can sometimes have on these things. So yeah, I was just saying, Rabia, about my collection of swords, and also a new book landed on my my doorstep, as it were, literally on my doorstep, because they don't pop it through the door anymore because my dog gets hold of them. A book you might be interested in, Rabia, called Advice Not Given. It's a fairly new book by Mark Epstein. I think it's fairly new anyway, fairly recent. I hadn't heard of it. I'd heard of Mark Epstein, but not this specific book. He's a psychotherapist. Hi, Justin, just jumped on board. I'm just talking about a book I've just received, Advice Not Given, a guide to getting over yourself. It's a book on Buddhism, obviously, about the Eightfold Path. Yeah, if you're not sure what the Eightfold Path is, we can talk about that sometime today, in the next hour or so. This is specifically about the ego, something I was talking about last night on the meditation group, which I think went quite well last night. We had about 18 participants, a large group. Yeah, I know, Justin, you practice a lot of meditation. You have done for a long time. So I'm speaking to the converted here. So guys, anything you want to ask me? I mean, I can't just keep prattling on. Hey, Rick, how are you doing, mate? It's Rick W. Rick's a bit of a marketing genius in the world of martial arts, as well as being a very good martial artist. Also trained under me as a Thai boxing instructor, and runs a group of successful clubs around the West Midlands. I think I'm right in saying that, aren't I, Rick? So it's good to have you on board. Just been chatting to the guys about meditation, actually, about the meditation group last night, which was well subscribed. And obviously, I want to make everybody aware of this new online course I'm going to be running. The first one is on the 24th of May, which is a Sunday at 2 o'clock. It's going to be a few hours. It's 20 quid for the 4 sessions. So there's going to be every Sunday from the 24th of May at 2 o'clock on Zoom. It's called How Not to Lose Your Shit. So it's how to keep things together when things around seem to be falling apart, which depends on your perception, of course. Yeah, that's what the course is going to be about. I'll be putting some information on that in the obviously in the comments section when this is all finished and the feed goes onto YouTube. Yeah, who else we got? Luke Mannion. Hey, Luke, good to see you. Hey, yeah. So hope things are going well. Charles, hiya, Charles. I've got to give you a call, mate. I need to give you a call about some stuff I want to talk to you about. I'll do that today as well. And who we got then? So Rabia's on board. Justin, Rick and Charles, Luke. Good. So anyway, hope things are going well with everybody. And I've got a whole list of things to talk about today. Unless, of course, you guys have got something of your own you want to discuss. Just drop your comments in the section below, and I'll pick up on them. Well, what's happening then, guys? Can you control triggers? Yeah, we're talking about anchors here, aren't we? When you talk about triggers, we're talking about actual anchors. Is that right, Rick? We're talking about associations of things that trigger off responses, negative or positive. I guess if that's what you are talking about, then absolutely you can control them, just as you can install them. You can install triggers, you can get rid of triggers, you can collapse them. They're called, in NLP, we call them anchors, where you anchor an experience to an emotion. So something happens, for example, music's a good example of triggers. Okay, you could be feeling great and you hear a piece of music that is maybe the blues, something like that, and that brings you down, that changes your state. And the opposite is true as well. You can be feeling a little bit down, and then you hear some music that uplifts you. That's a trigger, that's an anchor, what we call an anchor in NLP. So we always have and always will make these associations with things. Some of you remember the smell of Thai boxing oil. Even just the mention of Thai boxing oil, that will actually essentially make you imagine you're back in Thailand. It's like takes you back to the experience of when you first smelt and had that impact. And how triggers work are quite simple, really. You have an experience, any experience at all, good or bad, okay? And experiences run through what's called the bell curve, okay? So essentially the experience starts at point A at a moment in time and increases intensity. So as it moves up the curve, it reaches its peak. Now, this is when triggers are installed, when anchors are installed at the peak of the experience. Not before you reach the peak, but actually on the peak of the experience and not after the peak, okay? So if you want to install a trigger, i.e. make yourself be motivated to have more confidence, to get out of bed in the morning, for example, you can install a trigger. And the way you do that is very simple. You pick the specific thing. So let's say it's confidence. Okay, that's always a good one. It's always good to have more confidence. And the big one I've used this with a lot of people is for things like performance and public speaking. So when you're doing public speaking, people get very nervous. It's probably the most common phobia in existence. Forget spiders, forget snakes, okay? And essentially what happens is people get nervous before they go in front of a group of people for whatever reason. The reason doesn't really matter, okay? We're not interested in why somebody has a bad experience when they perform. We want to look at how is it they make themselves feel bad beforehand, okay? And it could come through a host of different reasons. But the main thing is you can always remember a time when you were totally confident, okay? So what I'd get people to do is fairly simple. You go back in your mind's eye to a time when you were totally, totally confident, okay? Saying what you saw, hearing the sound you heard at the time, if there are any, and of course, accessing the feelings you had at the time. So if you go back to a time when you had confidence, seeing what you saw, hearing what you heard, and feeling what you felt, and then intensify the memory, i.e. double the feeling, expand on the feeling. And often when people do this, I get them to close their eyes so they can get a vivid, if they're visual, they get a vivid image in their head of that thing they did where they were totally confident. You then install the trigger. Once the feeling rises to the point, the top of the bell curve, the highest point of intensity, that's when you install the trigger. What sort of triggers can you use, you may ask? Right, okay. So one of the triggers you can use, obviously, is a physical trigger, something that nobody else would see. If you may have noticed me, sometimes I'll do this, or this. That's because I'm firing off a trigger, usually unconsciously, to bring in a state, whatever that state is. Okay, so think of the state that you want, confidence, motivation. You can fill in the details yourself. Go back to that specific time when you had an experience that was similar. Now, when I'm talking about confidence, if you want to be confident about going on stage, and you've never been on stage before, obviously you don't have a memory of it, okay? So you go back, you pick something that you're confident about on a day-to-day basis. You're confident that you can pass a driving test. You've passed it. You're confident that you can make a cup of tea, because you do. You make a really good cup of tea. So pick something simple and go back to that memory. Yeah, seeing what you saw, hearing what you heard, and feeling what you felt at that time. Intensify the experience by focusing on the image and the feeling or the sounds. You'll find out how to intensify it. Once that association's in place, you'll feel your body confident. You'll feel the experience of having made their cup of tea, having passed your driving test. All of those feelings will flood back and then put in the trigger. As I say, it could be a physical trigger, like snapping your fingers, rubbing your hands together, squeezing your hands, pressing your thumb. It could be anything, but it's your trigger. Once you've installed the trigger and you're convinced that that's in there, do something different. It's called breaking state, okay? And what you do is you go off, make yourself a cup of tea, or coffee, go and take the dog for a walk, come back, fire off the trigger. Squeeze the thumb, squeeze the hands, whatever it is you put in, fire off the trigger, and that will bring back that state. Golfers do it, tennis players do it, runners do it. If you watch all of the great sportsmen, they all have their own little idiosyncratic thing that they do before the game. Some tennis players, you'll see them spinning the racket. Golfers will fiddle with the tee, or they'll do something with their glove, yeah, on their hand. Boxers might do something like scratch their head. You'll all have heard apocryphal stories of people who they didn't play well in their football match because they didn't have their lucky socks on. The socks have become an anchor to a good experience. Okay, you watch Alan Shearer when he was playing football. He used to use that hand salute when he scored a goal. He'd do that. Before he took a penalty, he'd do that. He'd put his hand up and drop his head. So what he was doing, and I believe unconsciously, was firing off an anchor to allow him to perform at his best. So anchors are really, really powerful things, right? Really powerful things. So you've already got anchors, all of you, and some of them will be negative anchors. So you'll have a bad association, shall we say, with going on stage in front of people, doing a presentation, taking a class, even something as simple as taking a warm-up for a Thai boxing session. And these are negative anchors, and you've got to get rid of those. If you're going to perform to your best ability, negative anchors have no place in that aspect of your performance. And that'll come across, obviously, it comes across on camera. If you lack confidence, it'll come across to an audience, okay? And this is a key point I'm making. I'm actually, just so you know, Rick, I'm actually putting a thing together called How to Be Comfortable in Front of the Camera. After the discussion we had yesterday, I've sort of put the wheels in motion now. I'm going to do a whole series of how to be comfortable as a performer. Because as most of you guys know, I trained as an actor back in 1987 when I qualified. So being in front of a lens, in front of a camera, in front of a group of people is just sort of bread and butter for me. But yeah, I mean, I personally use anchors and triggers, probably unconsciously now. A lot of things I do are unconscious. And I have been unconscious from time to time back in the day when I've sparred. We'll go back to that maybe another time. So to answer your question, Rick, yeah, you can control triggers. Every emotional response you have is in your control. I believe it was a psychologist called Pribram said that there's only two fears that are installed almost at birth, and that's the fear of falling and loud noises. And these, we believe, are genetic imprints to protect us, because obviously as children, we're carried because we can't walk. So if we're dropped, that's significantly dangerous to our health, mental health and physical health. And loud noises imply danger. And they believe that these go back to our prehistory roots, you know, when we were living in caves and subsisting on roots and berries and killing the odd mammoth. So there's two main emotional triggers that are in place, which are difficult to get rid of. And in fact, evolution probably won't allow you to get rid of it. They're that wired into the neurology. And these are loud noises and falling. All other emotions, everything else is learned. from the age of 0 all the way through till probably about 8 or 9 when things have started staying in place. And if those of you who got kids will see that change in your children about the age of 8 or 9, suddenly they start behaving in a specific way, the way we've trained them, I guess. And they take on the mannerisms and sadly some of the emotional baggage that the parents have and their peers. So yeah, we can control emotions. They're all within your control. You have a choice. You know, I've said this many times. You can either drive the bus or you can be a passenger. You know, I've always made the choice where I'm driving the bus. And sometimes I'll take people with me, but I'm on a good route usually. A lot of people I meet are being driven by their emotions to places that they really don't want to go. And that's sort of what we explore when we meditate, isn't it? We look at being in the present moment and going with the flow, essentially. You watch a good actor perform, they go with the flow. It's a very natural feeling, okay? And it's practiced and it's rehearsed. And I would say to all instructors who want to get better at becoming instructors is you've already got knowledge of your art, Muay Thai, karate, kickboxing, aikido, whatever it is you do. What you need to do now is master your performance skills, master the ability to entrance, to hold in the palm of your hand an audience. That's a long answer to a simple question, but it's, you know, it is simple. Anchoring is very simple. I do it to my students all the time, Rick. I think I've told you about this, and I've made most of you students aware of it anyway. You know, when I get somebody who's given a good performance, i.e. a good roundhouse kick, good hands, good elbows or whatever, I'll go over and I'll either touch the shoulder, I'll say something, or I'll look in a specific way. So an anchor doesn't actually have to be a physical thing. It can actually be a thumbs up. It can be a word. It can be a change in the intonation of your voice. I can give you an example of how I use an anchor to hypnotize people. This is how Darren Brown does it. I used to run a practice where I'd see clients on a Saturday morning up in Kings Heath, part of Birmingham, called The Well. It was like a holistic therapy centre. And what I would do, some of them we'd just talk, and I would give them strategies for dealing with the problem they'd brought to me: phobias, smoking, depression, things like this. But every now and again, people would actually ask me, would you hypnotize me? I want to be hypnotized for whatever reason. And hypnosis is part of what I do. In fact, all communication is hypnosis. All communication. It's up to me, the hypnotist, how deep I want to take you. That's the skill. So I had one specific client and she came in, and this is using anchors as well, guys. So this is an example of how I'm using an anchor to get somebody into a deep altered state. We were sitting on the chairs and she looked across the room to two big comfy chairs that I had in the corner. And she said, "Oh, what are those chairs for? They look really comfortable. Can we sit in those?" And I said, notice the change of my voice. I said, "Are those chairs over there?" "Ah, no. We can't sit in those chairs because, well, those are the chairs I use when I want to take people into a deep hypnotic state." And you could see her starting to glaze over, and she went, oh. I said, "So maybe we'll use them later." And of course, what I did was I used the chairs. So I've already installed an anchor and an expectation that, hey, she's going to be hypnotized when she sits in those comfy chairs. So I said, okay. I said, I think actually what's pertinent today is to give you a deep relaxation response through hypnosis, and then put some ideas in your head. Would you be happy for me to do that? She couldn't wait. The motivation was unbelievably high. So again, I used that motivation. I said, this would be really good, wouldn't it? You're feeling this good. You're going to be able to go into a deep state, a deep state of trance. And I'm sure you're looking forward to that, aren't you? And she went, yeah. So already I've increased her motivation. I also, and my dog is scratching the carpet. I don't know whether you can hear that. My dog has come into the room, which I use as the studio, and is now scratching the carpet. Well done, Snip. So, getting back to the room, forget there was no dog in that room. So she's now in a heightened state. She's motivated to actually go into a trance. And I actually said, now. And as she sat in the chair, I said, as you sit in the chair, your eyes will close and you can now go into a deep, relaxed state. That's right. All the way down. And then I went into the induction and took her deeper and deeper. So I've used anchors in a couple of different ways, one after another in the session, to get the best out of my client. That's how you communicate with people, okay? That's how a comedian communicates with their audience, how an actor communicates the dramatist's idea of the play to an audience, to get the emotion. Because if you're not getting an emotional response, you're not installing anchors, you don't know what you're doing. And sometimes, and I've seen it happen so many times, we can actually get, how can we say this? We actually install negative anchors in people and we don't even know we've done it. We don't even know we've done it. And when that happens, we create problems for ourselves, both as instructors and as friends. Because if you're installing negative anchors in people, that's not what you want to be doing to some of your close friends. So be careful what you do. Be careful what you say. Be careful what your actions are. I'll give one more example. I'm always coming up with these stories, but they are important. They're called embedded commands, which is another part of hypnosis, which I'm sure we can talk about at some point in the future. So here's an example. There's a guy used to train with me. He came in the gym and he was really down all the time. And he was talking about his father who died 2 years ago. And I was like, 2 years ago? He said, yeah, I just, I came in the gym and I was feeling okay. And then Paul came up to me and was having a chat with me. And I just felt really down. And I thought, what's Paul said or done? And I said, did Paul say something? He goes, no, he's a really nice guy. And he sort of patted me on the shoulder and said, how you doing, mate? And I just had this overwhelming feeling of being at my dad's funeral. Anyway, cut a long story very short. Essentially, what had happened at the funeral of which Paul had attended, obviously my friend he was very low, he was grieving, he just lost his father. And everybody, including Paul, was coming up and patting him on the back going, I hope you're all right, mate. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm really sorry to hear about your father. And they were installing an anchor, a physical anchor on his shoulder. So it was no wonder that when somebody came up, particularly Paul, who was also at the funeral, patted him on the shoulder, meaning well that the anchor was triggered and Paul was back thinking about his dad. And obviously the funeral. Not a good anchor to have. Not after 2 years. Not appropriate to be grieving after 2 years. Yeah? Unless, of course, it's your dog. That's a different thing altogether. There's a couple of examples of anchors and how powerful they can be. I have an anchor in the morning that's making a cup of tea. I know that's an anchor because the taste of tea sort of brings me round it. And I'm not sure whether it's the tannin or the caffeine, but I think it's the idea of it, And we all have these anchors in our day-to-day life. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Some of them limit us. People have limiting beliefs that prevent them from moving on. And I'm sure you can all think of some. I'm sure you can all think of them. So yeah, Stuart's on board. Hiya Stuart, hope you're doing well, mate. And I think I said hello to Kay. Kay's made the mention, anchors. Love psychological tricks. They are tricks in a way, and they are playing with your psychology. But actually the biggest trick of all is language. It's magic. Language, the way we can use language is actually like magic. It can create changes, create effects in people that, well, you wouldn't get your breath. When you have insight into the level of which language works. In fact, in my next newsletter, I'm talking about, or my blog, I can't remember now, they both blend one into one, which I hope people are getting. I talk about how the language is used and misused, abused by humans throughout the globe. Generalizations, deletions, and distortions. They're just three aspects of what we call in NLP the meta model. We generalize, we delete, and we distort. And whilst it's useful, it is useful to generalize sometimes. Sometimes it's not. If you look at politicians, they're very good at generalizing, and people believe them. And people are swept away by the generalizations. And we can all think of generalizations. You see what I just did there? I actually used a generalization to express an idea. We can all use generalizations when we need to. All? Everybody? Does everybody use generalizations? Quite a lot of people, probably most people, but not all. So you've got to be careful when we use language, unless we want to achieve something with it. And obviously politicians use language in such a clever way because they have people who write for them. They're not clever enough to make these speeches, to come up with these ideas. And part of me believes that Boris Johnson's buffoonery is actually a very carefully orchestrated act to make sure he's, although he looks stupid, is not left hanging on the hook and is left responsible for this, because he's telling you to go out, but telling you not to go out. He's using a lot of what we call distortion. Distortion of the facts. Governments are always known for that, as are people. And individuals who come to see me for interventions in NLP will talk to me. They have to use language to express what's going on in their map of the world. And I have to listen. I have to listen to their verbal language patterns, but I also have to watch for their non-verbal patterns, their body language. Okay, what is it they're doing with their hands? What did they just do? Did I notice their pupil dilation? Did I notice the skin color change? Did the muscles tense in the neck? There's tiny things happen in a human being when we're communicating. These are non-verbal indicators. And then, of course, you've got the verbal indicators, the generalizations, the deletions, the distortions, specificity. You've got internal, external patterns. All of these patterns are going on within the human. And when a human is just being in front of you, telling you about their problem or whatever it is they're telling you about, you open your senses up so you can absorb all that information. That's the skill in NLP. I know a lot of people who've done NLP courses, but they haven't actually done any hands-on work. When I used to run my NLP practitioner courses, if you couldn't practice NLP at the end of it, I wouldn't give you the certificate. It was very much a hands-on course. But I do know people who've done courses, and I'm not going to name any of them, but obviously they've done the course and their theory is incredible. Now, if you had a doctor who was really good at theory and a doctor who was really good at practice, which doctor would you go to? Exactly. You know, it's like me teaching NLP, like teaching somebody to swim, but without the water. So I'd say, right, we're going to learn to swim, but we haven't got a pool. It's too dangerous. You're not going to go in the pool. You can't. So you have to get in the water. My NLP courses were always about getting in. In fact, everything I've ever taught is about getting in the water, getting in there and doing it. Don't just dip your toe in. Let's jump in, and let's really swim. You know, and that is the key, I think, to allowing people to achieve the outcome that they want. Notice I didn't use the word success there because that has too many awful connotations for positivity. It's about achieving outcomes. And if you don't achieve the outcome, remember what I say, guys, you haven't failed. You've simply not achieved the outcome. It's just feedback. So you do something else until you achieve the outcome you desire. And remember that outcome, and we discussed this last night, the outcome is not fixed in stone. No outcomes, like happiness, okay? It's not going to last forever. Trust me, it's not. And anybody who tells you other than that is talking BS. They're talking bullshit, okay? There's a guy called Sam, no, it wasn't Sam Harris. It might have been Sam Harris. Yeah, Sam Harris, the atheist and right-hand philosopher and all-round quite intelligent chap, wrote a book called Waking Up, but there was a friend of his wrote a book called 10% Happy. 10% Happy. That's a good book, and he just about summed it up. Oh, sorry, Justin. Always used anchors whilst working the doors, especially doing the meet and greet to give me authority over customers and therefore being better able to control them if extraction was needed. Love the terminology, Justin. Extraction. Extracting a client. Yeah, yeah. That's what I used to do. I extract the bad behaviours from people and get them out the door. But you make a good point there about authority. This is the other thing when we're performing. If you've learned the lines, if you know your subject really well, there's a sense of authority that comes out. There's a sense of confidence that comes out into the room. And when you're a doorman without that authority, you're the doorman who's going to be the one hiding in the toilet or getting their head kicked in, or not knowing how to handle people because you haven't been wide awake to what's going on. And this wide awake thing is what we look for when we're meditating. We're learning to be in the moment, being in the flow, so we can control the environment, we can control our behaviors, we can control and develop our skills and capabilities. Our beliefs and values are strong. And of course, we identify with that particular outcome, that desire. We're the alpha in the room that everybody looks to control the situation. Yeah, a huge subject and one that I can talk about all day long. And in fact, I do when I'm running courses. And that's what we're going to be exploring on the How Not to Lose Your Shit seminar. So if some of you guys have just joined recently in the past 10 minutes or so, I'm doing a seminar every Sunday, 2 p.m. from the 24th of May, called How Not to Lose Your Shit. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm saying 2 hours, but knowing me, it'll be a 4-hour session each time. So you're going to get value for money. It's only 20 quid for the whole course. And hopefully people will go away having got something out of it. I'm hoping some of you get something out of today. I mean, that's the idea of these question and answer things. I'm not an expert. You know how I feel about them. And I'm certainly not a master. I've not mastered anything. And none of us have. And it's recognition of that allows you to grow. And you're constantly growing. I was just saying, for those that just joined us later on, I just had a really good book arrive called, sort of sums up what I'm about really, which is called Advice Not Given, a guide to getting over yourself, which I really like, by Dr. Mark Epstein, who's a psychologist and a crazy Zen Buddhist, which most of my writers seem to be. But then I do owe a lot to my time with several meditation teachers back in the past, secular though I am. So, how did you put in the anchor during the meet and greet, Justin? Well, I'll have to tell. A meet and greet gives you authority. So when you meet someone, I can only speak for myself, Justin. So obviously, if I get this wrong, you can tell me your method. It's a shame this is not a phone in, really. This would be much better. But I'm going to be doing a podcast, which will be live in a couple of weeks' time. I'm doing a pre-recorded podcast next week, and then I'm also doing a live one. So I'll invite some of you guys on the show. So when I was working the doors, you'd see somebody come up. And, yeah, I wouldn't make assumptions about them. Obviously, if they were drunk and swinging their fists, then that's a different thing. But I wouldn't make any assumptions about what their behavior was going to be like. I would treat them like everybody else. And in fact, I'll give you an even better example. I was on the doors with a friend. I'm not going to say who, because he was a bit of a dick, to be honest. And there was a huge queue. And Justin will probably remember this. There was this story anyway. There's a huge queue all the way down. So I walked up and down the queue saying good evening to everybody. So that was a meet and greet. I was actually saying, hi, I'm Bob. I'm your doorman tonight. I hope you have a good night, guys. And I noticed about 20 down the queue, there's a couple of lads, a bit leery, but young lads, they're out for a night out. So that was fine. They'd had a few drinks. And I noticed one of them had trainers on. So, and this is how you communicate effectively with people. I said to him, I said, look, son, I would nip home and change your shoes because we're not going to let you in with trainers on. And of course, they kicked up. Oh, well, fucking hell. I said, oh, right, okay. And I looked them straight in the eye. I said, right, are you going to wait until you get right to the front of this queue? And then we're going to turn around to you and say, go home and get your shoes changed. Do you want me to do that, do you? Or do you want me to help you? And ask you, just go home now. We'll keep your place in the queue and you can get them changed. We'll let you in if you just nip home now. What are you going to do? Do you want to wait? And he went, oh, I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry, geezer. So anyway, I walked back down the line and my mate turned around to me. He said, what was going on up there? I said, oh, no, nothing. I've just told the lad to go home. And he said, you should have waited until he came and we could have sent him off home. I was like, what a twat. And this is the problem. Some doormen have got a really bad rap because that's the way they treat people. They think by being larger than life, full of bravado, full of shit, really. Yeah, bullshit, and posturing and being covered in tattoos and being steroided out is a good doorman. They're wrong. Being a good doorman is about meeting and greeting, treating people with respect, and they'll give you that respect back. And if they don't, guess what? As Justin just said, you're in a really powerful position because other people around you will see that you were a fair doorman. If it does kick off, okay, everybody will say to the police when questioned, no, the doorman's a really nice guy. He was trying to sort it out. He was trying to be helpful. No, it wasn't the doorman. So you've got a lot of things in your favour by, in a sense, installing unconsciously anchors in the group because they're now anchored to the experience that this is a good doorman, he's a fair doorman. He has authority. He is the alpha in the room who will protect us if it kicks off because that is your job. People want to have a good night and not have any hassle. The job of a good doorman is to recognise the problem and deal with it immediately. If that doorman hasn't built up rapport on the meet and greet or put in a sense of authority, then the person who's kicking off is going to be harder to extract. And this is what a lot of teams have problems with. They don't work as a cohesive team, or the individual doorman doesn't have the authority, because he's scared, he's out of his depth, or he's just an arse, basically, just an arsehole. And I've met a few of them. I was stopped by a doorman a few years ago because I had a hoodie on, and his attitude made me want to punch him in the head until the head doorman came and sorted it out, apologised, and got rid of the other kid. He moved him on. He put him on the back door somewhere. So I think I'm right in saying what I've said there. Yeah. I think that's how I would perceive the anchor. The handshake is a great anchor. But you have to build that authority first before you install the anchor. So you talk to the person, I hope you're going to have a really pleasant night tonight, or it's good to see you, you're back again, and make them feel good, and then fire off the anchor. They'll associate the handshake with your good feeling. Another interesting thing about handshakes, whenever I was seeing clients for like psychotherapeutic interventions, you know, like personal problems or whatever, I would never shake their hand when I met them the first time. I would acknowledge that they were in a bad place because they've come to see me. I would just ask them to come in the room. I'd say, oh, come in, you must be I'm Bob. Nice to meet you. Come and sit yourself down. Tell me all about what's going on. Wouldn't shake their hand because I'm not gonna shake their hand at the end of the session and bring back all those bad feelings. So they're already in a negative state. So I wouldn't shake their hands. So we finish the session. I get them into a good state, which is at the end of the session, and I'll shake hands with them. I'll say, look, it's been really nice meeting you. I may be seeing you again. Bang, 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 bang. I fire off the anchor. So the next time they came to see me, if their mood had gone down a bit, what they're going to do, they're going to shake my hand. I'll put my hand out. They'll shake my hand to start to feel good. So we pick up the pieces from where we last left off. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? It's like when we do a wide bow at the beginning of a session, at the end of the session, we do it at the beginning of the session because people are excited to be there so that we all do that, the hands together. At the end of the session, everybody's had a brilliant time because they've worked hard and got the most out of the session. We do that to finish. Yes, it is about respect, but it's also a sneaky little anchoring technique. And you'll see people that I've trained years and years ago will still come up to me and do a wide bow. And strangely, that makes me feel good. And I've asked them and it makes them feel good. And it's a lovely little anchor, the wide bow. It's a lot more than it appears. The Muay is an anchor. It's an anchor to get you ready to fight. It's a big, long anchor, but it's definitely an anchor. The music, Thai music, is also an anchor. So Justin's come on, quite simple. Be polite. When they walked up the entrance, I would always hold out one hand just to pause them for a brief, okay, and then step aside and want them in. So that there you go. That in itself is an anchor, the hand position. So anchors everywhere. I bet you know a few anchors as well. I've met a few anchors in my time. It's a good job I've got this cup of tea because I will dry up. So, okay, we've only got sort of 5 guys watching and 3 thumbs up. It's quite a quiet one today, guys. Is that because I haven't promoted it enough? I have no idea. Maybe that's the way these things work. But it's early days yet. I think this is the 4th one we've done. Maybe the 4th one. Some of you might correct me on that. And yeah, so if anybody's got any questions, sound of kicks on pads as an anchor for me. Yeah. That's absolutely true. The sounds of kicks on pads, definitely. Working the doors about providing a safe drinking environment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, the fence. Okay, talked about in self-protection courses. Yeah. Now, the term fence actually was coined by an old student of mine, Jeff Thompson, and he called it the fence. Or the guard. I mean, there's a lot of people who use the term actually, so it's not just me. Peter Constantine as well, who's been around a long time. Some of you guys will never have heard of. Justin will, obviously. Yeah. So you create a fence. It's also about creating space. It's about giving you range and distance, and it shows that you are in control, unless you're handshaking. Yeah. Stuart, 2 hours each Sunday for the course. Sounds fun. Is there a lot to know? In terms of a lot to know, what I do need from you, if you're enrolling on the course, you'll get an email from me. If you do enroll on the course, you need to email me a list of things you would like me to cover that are personal to you. I won't be sharing those things, but I'll be very cleverly weaving things together so that everybody gets something out of the questions you ask. So there may be, one of you might say, oh, I've got a phobia of snakes, and we'll just do a phobia. And the people who've got them will hopefully lose them. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Stuart. So it's basically 2 and a bit hours of me going through your list of things, outcomes you wish to achieve in a way that helps you change. It's like a group psychotherapy session, but without people knowing who I'm talking about. Unless people want me to talk about them, in which case I'm happy to share that confidence. This is known as dead air on the radio, when nothing is happening. It's usually at this point where you'd have adverts or play a record. Or you'd have guests. And if a guest stopped talking, you'd fill in the detail there, which is what I've just done now. Oh yeah, Jeff Thompson, that's a blast from the past. Yeah, I think quite a few of the guys on here have heard of Jeff Thompson. Well, some of them certainly won't. And Jeff Thompson was I met him through Combat Magazine, I think. If any of Jeff's lads, or even Jeff himself, is listening, which I doubt, Jeff worked in a factory when I met him, and I used to go up and teach him Muay Thai in his garage in Coventry. I went through some domestic changes at the time. We also got him on board writing a thing called The Pavement Arena with Ian McCraner, who's another good friend of mine. I'm still on Facebook. And they did karate together originally. And Jeff put together a whole body of work on self-protection, which at the time was unusual. I believe now he's just a writer. I believe that's what he says he is. He's a writer, and that's what he does for a living now. And to be fair, I think he won a BAFTA award for one of his players. But I don't think much happened after that, which is typical of BAFTAs. It usually doesn't ensure success. It's this point where Nina would say something inappropriate, but Bess, he killed him. Yeah, Nina normally comes on here and says something inappropriate, doesn't he? But he's obviously not on board today. There's not a lot of people on board today, as far as I can see. Yeah. I'm not sure how many we've got. Well, I can only go on what is in his books. I think it was 300 fights, I believe, on the doors. I think it was. I think the book was called Watch My Back, and there was also Bouncer. Yeah, you need to read the book for yourself and make your own mind up. It's not really for me to say on a live thing on YouTube. Who's to say? I remember Marcus saying to Jeff Thompson. Marcus used to work the doors, and he said to him, I was running a course at one of Jeff's seminars. I was teaching on it. I think I was teaching clinch work, combat clinch work or something, which is another course that I run called Combat Clinch Work, CCW. And I remember Marcus saying, how many fights did you have on the doors? And I think he said 300. And Marcus said, I've been on the doors for 9 years. I've only ever had 2. You must be a crap doorman, implying that obviously you shouldn't be fighting if you're a good doorman. I don't know what Jeff's answer was to that, because I didn't listen. I was talking to one of his students. I think it was Nick, probably Nick England, who I'm surprised is not on here. Nick's normally following me around on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. So if you are listening, Nick, make a comment. I know you're over in Belgium as well. I think he's in Ghent as well. So he's over your way. Okay, Kay? Over your way. So there's a bit more dead air for us. So anybody got any other questions? That was a good question, Rick. It led us down a bizarre snake-like path. All the way from anchors all the way through to working on the doors. Interesting. That's what it's all about, isn't it? And sadly, Nina hasn't come on. So if any of you guys can tell me, are we having a delay on the line, or is this just a quiet spot where you're all contemplating the words I've just said? Let me know in the comments. Ghent rocks. Yeah, I remember when Kay met a friend of mine, Neil, who runs the Henrietta Street Gym, a really beautiful gym in the city. Neil Perkins, who used to work the doors a lot, been shot at, and many things. Some great stories from Neil. It's a shame he's not on here. I remember Kay meeting him and said, "Yeah, I'm from Ghent." And Neil turned around and said, "Yeah, it's full of brothels." And I thought, yeah, that's very telling. And I think you agreed, Kay, didn't you? And Justin just said, if I was fighting, it meant I hadn't done my job right, which is paraphrasing basically what I said. Yeah, it's true. If you're fighting on the doors, you're obviously not doing your job right. It's inevitable that you're going to have 1 or 2 fracasses, little skirmishes, but it shouldn't really happen at all. You should be able to get people out of the venue very quickly and dispose of them, extract them, as Justin calls it. Yeah, being switched on, absolutely key. And that comes down to awareness in everything, not just on the doors. Yeah, Neil said, what happens in Ghent stays in Ghent. Yeah, it's a shame Neil's not on here. He would have some amazing things to add. But I believe he's running his own, I think he might have his own live feed or his own podcast at this time of day. I'm not sure. Or he teaches online. Because like all of us with gyms, he's like got nothing on now. So all you self-employed people out there, my heart bleeds for you, mate. Yeah, and I don't think there's much resolution with regard to the gyms. I think the talk is of opening gyms in October, which is fine. But I want to know what the government's going to do, for self-employed people in the meantime, because all self-employed people are supposed to be getting a contact by at least, I think, the 13th or the 17th of May in the UK to say whether they're eligible for this 80% on their wages for the past 3 years that they've earned, or profit, I don't know. Which probably means, like a lot of self-employed people, I won't be getting anything. So hence the seminars and courses. So we'll see. Anyway, that's we don't know what's going to happen there. This is the problem, you see. People can spend too much of their time thinking about the future and what might happen, as opposed to what's going on now, which I think is a key thing that we talk about on this live stream and in the meditation group. That being here now is the only real place that exists at this moment in time. It's by acting now that we affect the future. And what happened in the past, well, we can't change it. of course, there is some good stuff from the past that we can always go and pick up and bring back into the present day. That's a technique called timelining, which is something we can talk about. And Kay's mentioned about the 3 Squirrel podcast. Is anybody confused about the 3 Squirrel podcast? I know we know what a podcast is, but what is Neil talking about when he talks about the 3 squirrels? He used to have 2, but evidently he has 3 squirrels now. And they're metaphors, really. They're not real squirrels. They're metaphorical squirrels. And then we've jumped the conversation back. Yeah, there's about 2 different discussions going on about trying to extract women from a pub is like trying to put an angry cat in a bath of water. Yeah, extracting women put up a hell of a fight, more so than men. And I think that's been my experience as well. So yeah, the squirrels. What are we on about there then? Anybody curious to know what we mean by the squirrels? It's an interesting psychological technique that Neil has always used. I haven't said that. He was heavily influenced by me when he was 15 or 16. So the idea of the squirrels was his, I guess, twist on another concept, which is called parts therapy. An interesting technique that I use with some clients, and you'll find I use a lot when I'm teaching as well. And you've probably heard me say things on the one hand, we want to do this, and on the other, maybe we should explore this possibility. It's called speaking in parts, and accesses various parts of people's unconscious mind who are linked into that. Again, anchor. So it virtually always comes down to anchors. And here's my anchor again. Yes, Stuart, you probably should. Well, if you work in the doors, yeah. But not generally. If you're a heterosexual, that's up to you. So we're getting sort of towards the end of the hour now. I don't know whether anybody's got any other questions now. We're 52 minutes in. So actually, we've got about 41, 42 comments on here now, which is really good. And quite happy with the way this is going. And I think, I'm not sure how many people have actually gone. I'm using a broadcast system here, which is a bit like the deck of that you get in a studio, professional recording studio, or like when I used to work on Kerrang. And that allows me to control all the input and so on. Charles, I've just seen your comment there. I missed it because I was talking. What's your opinion on Jungian psychology and how it relates to NLP? Okay, Jung, who was a student of Freud, really good stuff, obviously. These are all theories, just as NLP is. And Jung came up with some quite practical tools for working with dreams and archetypes, which is, as you know, Charles, another level altogether, okay? But again, archetypes are things that are created, man-made creations anyway, and how much value they have, I'm not so sure. I have more interest in what Jung was saying than I had in what Freud was saying, because a lot of Freud's speculations and ideas about the ego came out of probably his very odd childhood that he had as a Jew in a Jewish family with the Jewish culture. And nothing against the Jewish culture, just that it can be very constrictive, as many Jews and Catholics are the same will tell you. A lot of the problems will stem from that. So yeah, Jung's very interesting, but again, they're just theories about the mind, the unconscious and the conscious mind. And I explored a lot of those areas when I was younger. A lot of stuff on existentialism and Nietzsche, as well as Jung and Freud. And Freud said some interesting things about the ego, which was very useful. And of course, Jung built on that. And subsequently, people have built on top of those ideas until we get a better appreciation of how we think the unconscious works. Because remember, all of these are just models. And models can either be useful or not. And that's what I find myself doing. I'll listen to people and model what they're doing. I ask them how they do what it is, what they're doing, and then feed that information back through a series of convoluted techniques. And what I loved about the NLP was it seemed to stand on the shoulders of those people. Richard Bandler, the developer of NLP, actually sort of was influenced by all of these people, obviously, while he built up the field that became known as NLP. But how can I say, I got sidetracked then by a limited company coming up, a portal open today. I was like, oh, a portal. Justin's having a moment with his portal. But no, so Richard Bandler and John Grinder built the field on an attitude of curiosity. So it's not so much the techniques and the models that are important, it's your attitude towards those models and techniques. Okay, maintain an attitude of curiosity and skepticism while you're working with people. So yeah, I think Jung's valuable. But again, if you look at the work that's gone on after that, there is a really interesting Jungian psychotherapist who wrote a book called Ending the Myth of Happiness. A really good book. The guy, again, is a Zen Buddhist, but he's also a Jungian psychotherapist, and he wrote a book called Ending the Myth of Happiness. Really interesting book. And I'll put these books in the comments below when we close this whole thing live stream down. So there was Ending the Myth, and there was Advice Not Given. I'll put those two books down below so you can have a look at them if you wish. I hope that's answered your question, Charles. Sorry I missed your question. It was on the screen and I was busy looking at the camera, which is another important point. If you're doing live streams, looking at the camera, stop looking down at the screen. All right, just top tip there for those of you who are doing live streams. Use the camera. It's your friend. That's your audience, not that. Okay. Okay, the self-employed portal open today, mate. If you're a majority shareholder, you're classed as self-employed by the government. But if you're a limited business, you're not. Okay. Well, I have a limited company, but I'm also self-employed. Not that I'm bitter by that, of course. So I'm in a funny position because I'm a director of a limited company, which is Mediacate, which makes no money, really. But I'm also self-employed in the sense that I work for the university externally and obviously teach martial arts as well. So I'm in a funny position, which means that the government will get away with not paying me anything, I would have thought. But we'll find out. If the portal's open today, I shall go online and check it in. So if anybody else is online who's had experience of applying for getting their money back, well, you're not getting your money back, but getting a percentage, let me know. I'd be intrigued to hear about it. But I don't think I'm going to be entitled to anything because I'm in a very odd position, as you would expect. Sitting in front of a camera, surrounded by lights and microphones. Very odd. Maybe I should do this for a living. Get back on the radio, Bob. That's what I say. Radio Bob. Yeah, the program we used to do was called The Asylum, and I was invited on it. It'd been in existence for a couple of years, and they invited me on as a guest. And then I quietly took over and worked quite closely with Tim Shaw, who now has a program called Car SOS. You may know about that. So if you're into cars and Tim doesn't annoy you, then watch Car SOS. That's good old Tim Shaw. In fact, he got in touch with me the other day about Sterling Moss. So he's still keeping in touch. Good lad. Ah, thanks, Charles. Yeah. So, yeah, Jung's a funny old character. I think certainly better than Freud. Took it to the next level. And I've just realised that book, Ending the Myth of Happiness, is on the top of my shelves up there, which of course you can't see. It's up there. Yeah, very good book. So if you guys have got any other questions, just bang them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll end it there, I think. It's been good having you on board again, as usual. Remember, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. without fail, 12 noon. I'll be doing a live stream, even if it's just me and Justin and Kay and Rabia and who else is on today, and Stuart. Oh, and that's another big sort of shout out I want to give to Physical and Mental Strength. If you've not already subscribed to Stuart's channel, physical and mental strength, then do so. Okay. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so as well. It's not going to cost you anything. You get lots of free content. And if you're a patron on my Patreon page, which is in the links below, you can also obviously, have access to other material as well, which I'm adding to all the time. There's a big NLP thing going on there this week. So, and if you've got anything you want me to make a video about that interests you, please, please, please let me know. I can't read your minds. And sign up for the newsletter. If you haven't signed up to the blog, the higherwaycode.com/blog. In fact, I can put it on here. I've just realized there is a function on my system. Higherwaycode.com. I'm still here, guys. That will take you to the blog. Thanks, Justin. That's good to have you on board, mate. And I've just put the higherwaycode.com/blog. So go on there, sign up. You get a free book, which is talking about psychology, basically, about NLP type things. And it's free. And then that means you'll also get a newsletter from me telling you what's going on, not just in the camp, but just generally stuff, courses, seminars, and things like that I'm running. So if you want to keep informed, please. And guys, please share it if you can. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's the only way I can get this out to a wider audience. And that's for you guys on Facebook, on Twitter, and so on to go and share it. Yeah, thanks, Stuart. And like I say, check out physical and mental strength, really important. I can actually put the name of these, Ending the Myth of Happiness. That's one book that we talked about today. And the other one is Advice Not Given. Two great books. You'll find them on Amazon. Yeah, you'll find them on Amazon. Check them out. Really, really, really interesting books to read. It doesn't matter what your religious background, really, that has nothing to do with it. They're more or less secular works anyway. So I'm not going to see you guys now, probably till some of you on Thursday night. So yeah, Thursday night, 6 p.m. online, Thai boxing. And I'm available for one-to-ones as well, by the way, guys. I'm always available for one-to-ones. So if you want to give me a call, anything you want to discuss, either NLP, Muay Thai, self-protection, even swords, Kay is always training with me for an hour doing sword. Yeah, reasonable rates, lots of information. You tend to get more than the hour. Good value for money, I hope. And I'll start to close this down now. If anybody else has got anything to say, please say so now. Everybody's saying thanks. Happy to do so. Cheers. Yeah, okay, guys. So if there's nothing else to add, I will close the live stream now and bid you all a good afternoon. Stay safe. Don't listen to the government. Do what you think is sensible. All right, guys. And with that, my parting shot, I will say goodbye. See ya.